except these ones are darker and more grim. I'm gonna pause so that you can laugh and then we can continue. So it's just a little warning, you know, like when they say fairy tales by these two, they mean darker forms of folklore and fairy tales. Apparently they were dark to scare children back then. So there you go. Also, there is a lot of noise. I usually record on the weekends, and our little place where we live has a lot of children nearby. So if you can hear them yelling, it's just the little babies outside. I'm gonna read what it says on the back. The fairy tales of the Brothers Grimm are among the best loved and most famous in world literature. This volume features more than 40 of their best known fairy tales, lavishly illustrated with the drawings and color plates by Arthur Rackham. It's a very pretty book, by the way. So it was $10, which was not bad at all. But the front cover shows Red Riding Hood. And the wolf. This story, actually, when I was little, was definitely left me with a lot of questions. Because a lot of places kind of praise the fact that he ate her grandmother. Little Red Riding Hood. Okay. I want to pick maybe one or two from here, depending on how long they are. I already recognize some of these were made by Disney, and that's what I grew up listening to and watching and learning about. So this is definitely more complicated than that. Recognize Cinderella, Rumpelstiltskin, Rapunzel, Little Red Riding Hood, Snow White and Seven Dwarfs. This is just a table of contents, by the way. Those are the ones that I reckon. Well, Hansel and Gretel. Sleeping Beauty too. There's a lot more in here, obviously, but I did not recognize those. We should probably do something that we kind of know. I'm not quite sure what the difference in stories is with Hansel and Gretel, so I'm gonna check that one out first. forest to where it is the thickest. There we will light a fire for them and give each of them one piece of bread more. And then we will go out to work and leave them alone. They will not find their way home again, and we shall be rid of them. No, wife, said the man, I will not do that. How can I bear to leave my children alone in the forest? The wild animals would soon come. The children had also not been able to sleep for hunger, and had heard what their stepmother had said to their father. Gretel wept bitter tears, and said to Hansel, Now all is over with us. Be quiet, Gretel, said Hansel. Do not distress thyself. I will soon find a way to help us. And when the old folks had fallen asleep, he got up, put on his little coat, opened the door below, and crept outside. The moon shone brightly, and the white pebbles which lay in front of the house glittered like real silver pennies. Hansel stopped and put as many of them in the little pocket of his coat as he could possibly get in. Then he went back and said to Gretel, Be comforted, dear little sister, and sleep in peace. God will not forsake us. And he lay down again in his bed. Smarty pants. When the day dawned, but before the sun had risen, the woman came and awoke the two children, saying, Get up, you sluggards. We are going into the forest to fetch wood. She gave each a little piece of bread and said, There is something for your dinner, but do not eat it up before then, for you will get nothing else. Gretel took the bread under her apron as Hansel had the stones in his pocket. They all set out together on the way to the forest. When they had walked a short time, Hansel stood still and peeped back at the house, and did so again and again. His father said, Hansel, what art thou looking at there and staying behind for? Mind what thou art about, and do not forget how to use thy legs. Father, said Hansel, I am looking at my little white cat, which is sitting up on the roof and wants to say goodbye to me. The wife said, Boom! That is not thy little cat, that is the morning sun, which is shining on the chimneys. Hansel, however, had not been looking at the cat, but had been constantly throwing one of the white pebble stones out of his pocket on the road. When they had reached the middle of the forest, the father said, Now, children, pile up some wood, and I will light a fire, for that you may not be cold. Hansel and Gretel gathered brushwood together as high as a little hill. The brushwood was lighted, and then the flames were burning very high. Then the woman said, Now, children, lay yourselves down by the fire and rest. We will go into the forest and cut some wood. When we have done, we will come back and fetch you away. The illustration I showed you earlier, it says Hansel stopped and put as many of them in the little pocket of his coat as he could possibly there's never a plank or bridge in sight. Take us across thy back so white. The duck came to them, and Hansel seated himself on its back and told his sister to sit by him. No, replied Gretel, that will be too heavy for the little duck. She shall take us across one after the other. The good little duck did so, and when they were once safely across and walked, the good little duck did so, and when they were once safely across and had walked for a short time, the forest seemed to be more and more familiar to them, and at length they saw from afar their father's house. Then they began to run, rushed into the parlor, and threw themselves into their father's arm. The man had not known one happy hour since he had left the children in the forest. The woman, however, was dead. Mexicans you had on your way home. So he bought beautiful dresses, pearls, and jewels for his two stepdaughters, and on his way home, as he was riding through a green thicket, a hazel twig brushed against him and knocked off his hat. Then he broke off the branch and took it with him. When he reached home, he gave his stepdaughters a thing which they had wished for, and to Cinderella he gave the branch from the hazel bush. Cinderella thanked him, went to her mother's grave and planted the branch on it, and wept so much that the tears fell down on it and watered it. It grew, however, and became a handsome tree. Thrice a day Cinderella went and sat beneath it, and wept and prayed, and a little white bird always came on the tree, and if Cinderella expressed a wish, the bird threw down to her what she had wished for. It happened, however, that the king appointed a festival which was to last 3 days, into which all the beautiful young girls in the country were invited, in order that his son might choose himself a bride. When the 2 stepsisters heard that they too were to appear among the numbers, they were delighted, called Cinderella and said, "Comb our hair for us, brush our shoes, and fasten our buckles, for we are going to the festival at the king's palace." Cinderella obeyed, but wept because she too would have liked to go with them to the dance, and begged her stepmother to allow her to do so. "Thou go, Cinderella," said she. "Thou art dusty and dirty, and wouldst go to the festival. Thou hast no clothes and shoes, and yet wouldst dance." However, Cinderella went on asking. The stepmother at last said, "I have emptied a dish of lentils into the ashes for thee. If thou hast baked them out again into ours, thou shalt go with us." The maiden went through the back door into the garden and called, "You tame pigeons, you turtle doves, and all you birds beneath the sky, come and help me to bake the good into the pot, the bad into the crop." Then 2 white pigeons came by the kitchen window, and afterwards the turtle doves, and at last all the birds beneath the sky came whirring and crowded in, and alighted amongst the ashes. And the pigeons nodded with their heads and began pick, 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 and the rest began also pick, 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 and gathered all the good grains into the dish. Hardly had 1 hour passed before they had finished, and all flew out again. The maiden carried the dishes to the stepmother and was delighted, and believed that she might now go with them to the festival. But the stepmother said, "All this would not help thee. Thou goest not with us, for thou hast no clothes and canst not dance. We should be ashamed of thee." On this, she turned her back on Cinderella and hurried away with her 2 proud daughters. When it was now at home, Cinderella went to her mother's grave beneath the hazel tree and cried, "Shiver and quiver, little tree, silver and gold throw down on me." Then the bird threw a gold and silver dress down to her, and slippers embroidered with silk and silver. She put on the dress with all speed and went to the festival. Her stepsisters and stepmother, however, did not know her, and thought she must be a foreign princess, for she looked so beautiful in the golden dress. Well, this is her. And the 2 stepsisters and the stepmother. king's son had waited until she came, it instantly took her by the hand and danced with no one else but her. When others came and invited her, he said, "She is my partner." When evening came, she wished to leave, and the king's son followed her and wanted to see to which house she went, but she sprang away from him and into the garden behind the house. Therein stood a beautiful tree on which hung the most magnificent pears. She clambered so nimbly between the branches, my cat, between the branches like a squirrel, that the king's son did not know where she was gone. He waited until her father came and said to him, "The stranger maiden has escaped from me, and I believe she has climbed up the pear tree." The father thought, "Can it be Cinderella?" and had an axe brought and cut the tree down. But no one was on it, and when they got into the kitchen, Cinderella lay there amongst the ashes as usual, for she had jumped down on the other side of the tree, had taken the beautiful dress to the bird on the little hazel tree, and put on her grey gown. On the third day, when the parents and sisters had gone away, Cinderella went once more to the mother's grave and said to the little tree, "Shiver and quiver, little tree, silver and gold throw down on me." And now the bird threw down to her a dress which was more splendid and magnificent than any she had had yet, and the slippers were golden, and when she went to the festival in the dress, no one knew how to speak for astonishment. The king's son danced with her only, and if anyone invited her to dance, he said, "She is my partner." When evening came, Cinderella wished to leave, and the king's son was anxious to go with her, but she escaped from him so quickly that he could not follow her. The king's son had, however, used a stratagem, and had caused the whole staircase to be smeared with pitch, and there, when she ran down, had the maiden's left slipper remained sticking. The king saw and picked it up, and it was small and dainty and all golden. The next morning, he went with it to the father and said to him, "No one shall be my wife, but she whose foot in this golden slipper fits." And that's that. There were two sisters. Then there were two sisters glad, for they had pretty feet. The eldest went with the shoe into her room and wanted to try it on, and her mother stood by, but she could not get her big toe in, and the shoe was too small for her. Then the mother gave her a knife and said, "Cut the toe off. When thou art queen, thou wilt have no more need to go on foot." Please don't. The maiden cut the toe off and forced the foot into the shoe, swallowed the pain, and went out into the king's son. Then he took her on his horse as his bride and rode away with her. They were, however, obliged to pass the grave, and there on the hazel tree sat two pigeons and cried, turn and peep, there's blood within the shoe. The shoe, it is too small for her, the true bride waits for you." Then he looked at her foot and saw how the blood was streaming from it. He turned his horse around and took the false bride home again, and said she was not the true one, and that the other sister was to put on the shoe. Then this one went on to her chamber and got her toe safely into the shoe, but her heel was too large. Please don't. Please don't. So her mother of the year, gave her a knife and said, "Cut a bit off the heel. When thou art queen, thou will have no more need to go on foot." Have we learned nothing? The maiden cut off a bit of her heel, forced her foot into the shoe, swallowed the pain, and went out to the king's son. He took her on his horse as his bride and rode away with her. But when they passed the hazel tree, two little pigeons sat on it and cried, turn and peep, there's blood within the shoe. The shoe is too small for her, the true bride waits for you." He looked down at her foot and saw how the blood was running out of her shoe, and how it had stained her white stocking. Then horse. Then he turned his horse and took the false bride home again. This is also not the right one, said he. Have you no other daughter? No, said the man. There is still a little stunned kitchen wench, which my late wife left behind, but she cannot possibly be the bride. You. The king's son said he was to send her up to him. The mother answered, oh, no, she's much too dirty. She cannot show herself. He absolutely insisted on it, and Cinderella had to be called. She first washed her hands and face clean, and then went and bowed before the king's son, who gave her the golden shoe. Then she seated herself on a stool, drew her foot out of the heavy wooden shoe, and put it into the slipper, which fitted like a glove. And when she rose up and looked at the king's son looked at her face, he recognized a beautiful maiden who had danced with him and cried, that is the true bride. The stepmother and the two sisters were terrified and became pale with rage. He, however, took Cinderella on his horse and rode away with her. As they passed by the hazel tree, the two white doves cried, turn and peep, no blood is in the shoe. The shoe is not too small for her. The true bride rides with you. And when they had cried that, the two came flying down and placed themselves on Cinderella's shoulder, one on the right and the other one on the left, and remained sitting there. I shall proceed. When the wedding with the king's son had to be celebrated, the two false sisters came in and wanted to get into favor with Cinderella and share her good fortune. When the betrothed couple went to the church, the elder was at the right and the younger at the left, and the pigeons pecked out one eye of each of them. Afterward, as they came back, the elder was at the left and the younger at the right, and then the pigeons pecked out the other eye of each, and thus, for their wickedness and falsehood, they were punished with blindness as long as they lived. The end. Yeah, well, so that one, Hansel and Gretel also has a clear message, by the way, but this one, yeah, if you sit with the messages yourself, you think about what it means to you. Well, I have a slight urge to know which is the darkest of their fairy tales, so I'm gonna look that up really quickly. There is one called The Rubber Bridegroom. Yeah, apparently there's a particular horrific incident that occurs in that story. Well, definitely not the ones that we read today. I'm glad. But yeah, these stories gonna take a twist, and obviously the retellings are not gonna be anywhere near this messed up. They still hold some true elements, obviously, the essence of the story. But man, that was insane. The bird one took me by surprise. I think Cinderella was much more gory than Hansel and Gretel, because I think the only thing I didn't really know about Hansel and Gretel was that the mother was dead at